Hello everyone, good evening. From India, I am Dr. Nazneen Pathan, physiotherapist and moderator for today's session. I welcome you all in Global Outreach Physiotherapy Webinar 2020, which is hosted by Global Outreach Medical and Health Association, which is an organization representing medical and health professionals. It promotes and provides accreditation, certification, educational training, and other resources for organization, professional, and student. I would like to thank our CEO, Mr. Rakesh Kumar, and our co-CEO, Dr. Jasmine Marwaha, who has been working so hard for the upliftment of our platform. Since our platform has been quite privileged of having so many young, talented, and astonishing speakers with us, and for our today's session, we are having Dr. Samina Sayed with us, who will be enlightening us on the topic of bronchial hygiene to physiotherapy perspective. I would like to give you all a brief introduction of our today's speaker, Dr. Samina Sayed. She is a renowned physiotherapist from Mumbai, India. She is an international speaker, writer, educator, and resource person, and have conducted multiple lectures and workshops globally. She is also an internationally certified cardiovascular and metabolic diseases exercise therapist, antenatal and postnatal therapist, ergonomist, and fitness advisor. She is currently a director of Physionic India, head of department and senior consultant in the Clinic International and Krishna Hospital, Mumbai. Hello, ma'am. I welcome you
Yes.
on behalf of Global Outreach Medical and Health Association. And with this, I over it to you. The platform is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Nazneen, for the introduction. And I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Global Outreach team and Mr. Rakesh for this invitation. And so, as we all know, that we are going to discuss today about the topic bronchial hygiene. And Dr. Nazneen has given a good brief introduction about me. So, I will not waste any of your time by speaking more about myself. So what we would do is directly we can go to the topic. But before going to the topic, I would just like to brief something, or like we can just have an introductory talk about what exactly bronchial hygiene is. So when we talk about hygiene, what does hygiene means? Hygiene means general cleanliness, like keeping ourselves clean, our body clean. And why do we do that? We just do that to prevent ourselves from any kind of disease, infection, or whatever reasons. Same way, we have to keep our lungs clean as well. So that's what our topic is. That is bronchial hygiene. And I will just share the screen. I hope you have to just tell me once it starts. So as I said, we will be talking about, sorry for the interruption, we'll be talking about bronchial hygiene, which is also called as pulmonary hygiene, or in a simpler term, you can say it as, or call it as lung hygiene. So lung hygiene in general term, without going into any medical term, is what? Just keeping your lungs clear and clean. That's it. And of course, that will give you some added benefits about what we will be talking. So before talking about the hygiene part of lung, let us just brush up quickly about few aspects of lung. You can say anatomy or physiology, not going much into detail about it, but something so that you can relate whatever I'm speaking further ahead about it. So we all know we have two lungs, right and lung, to survive. And if you don't have one, then of course you need to worry about it. So yes, we have two lungs, right and left, which is divided into different lobes. And these lobes can have tendency to develop, like to accumulate secretions in various respiratory or any other conditions which can lead to sputum production or mucus production in your lungs. Now, if you can see here, this is the central airway. If you can just see the marking, this is a central airway from which your bifurcation starts into left and right bronchus, from which it gets further divided into primary bronchus, secondary bronchus, tertiary bronchus, bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, and then alveoli. So basically, this is the main area where your entire secretions and mucus accumulation occurs. So what we mean by bronchial hygiene is just to basically the first and the primary thing that we have to do, keeping bronchial hygiene in mind, is clearing the lungs from secretions. Now, when I say clearing the lungs from secretion, what does that exactly mean? So let us take a small example of any disease like bronchiectasis, in which there is a lot of secretion, or you can say sputum production. So as you have seen before the lung picture. Now, just if you can see these markings, these are the areas where your lung is primarily and majorly affected in this disease. This is just an example pic. So within these alveoli, as I said, there is this kind of mucus production, which you can see like this. Okay, so what is our aim as a physiotherapist is just to remove this and make the lungs clear. Now, why we focus so much on clearing of lungs? Suppose if I don't clear it, let it just make it that way and try to understand. Suppose if I don't clear it, what will happen? It will start accumulating more and more. It can get infected and can lead to respiratory infections, can add on more complications to your lungs. Maybe you can get pneumonia as well, which is again a kind of infection of respiratory, or you can say respiratory infection, or that can also lead to reduced breathing capacity or labored breathing, difficulty in breathing, obstruction, or gradually with the increased infection, inflammation that can occur with this accumulation, you can also go to respiratory failure, or your lung can go into acute or whatever respiratory failure. So that is the reason keeping your lung clean, clear is very important, because bronchial hygiene just doesn't involve clearing your lungs, but that one thing is related to a lot of other you can say a lot of other functions that is important for a person to maintain their cardiorespiratory health, and in short, that contributes to your aerobic capacity and your overall general health. So coming back to the definition of bronchial hygiene, this is not a proper definition, but just to simplify it, it is a non-invasive therapy to mobilize secretion, remove secretions. Of course, once you mobilize it, you have to get those secretions to the central airways, as how we saw in the initial picture, right? This is your central airways, and if this is your lung, so if anywhere in your lung you have secretions, we have to mobilize those secretions to come to the central airways. And then with some maneuvers, we have to remove the secretion, which will in turn improve the gaseous exchange, because any kind of obstruction in your lungs can lead to improper or imbalanced gaseous exchange. And that will in turn improve your aeration and lung expansion. So ultimately, this entire thing will improve your respiratory capacity, volumes, your breathing pattern, and everything. So before going ahead, we will go in detail with those things as well. Now, when I talk about bronchial hygiene, it doesn't mean that you have to give this only to a very critically ill patient who is admitted in the ICU. A normal clearance can also be included in bronchial hygiene, like we just able to remove, suppose I have got viral infection of flu or anything, and I'm just removing cough, or you can say upper respiratory tract infection, which is very much treatable. In those cases also, we do remove cough, we clear our upper respiratory tract, and that is also included in bronchial hygiene. So when talking about normal clearance, it means, or it requires a patent airway, functional mucociliary escalator, effective cough, like a person should be able to cough effectively, and an effective cough can effectively move mucus from the lower or the upper airways, and then you can just propel it out. But there is also, there can be abnormal clearance as well, what we see in most of the ICU cases, or patients in where we have to apply a lot of other maneuvers to drain their secretions. And what does that include? Abnormalities in airway patency, mucociliary dysfunction, abnormality in mucociliary function, reduced strength of breathing muscles, abnormal or reduced cough reflex, as you can see in surgical patients, where because of anesthesia, the cough reflex is reduced, and all these can lead to mucus retention. Now, if there is mucus accumulated in your lungs, as I said initially, if we can again relate it with the pic which I mentioned earlier, this can lead to atelectasis. That means collapse of your lung or area, whatever, depending on the amount and the obstruction caused by the secretion. Pneumonia, as I said, if we can relate now again, any accumulation can lead to inflammation or infection, and that can lead to pneumonia, and also hypoxemia, because it will definitely alter or obstruct your oxygen balance in the body as well. So now coming to bronchial hygiene, why it is important, and as a physiotherapist, what are our goals when we talk about bronchial hygiene? Now, before starting with this, we need to understand that the moment you enter the ICU as a physiotherapist, the first thing that should click in your mind is bronchial hygiene. These two words are the beginning of your physiotherapy treatment. And that is the reason it is very important for you as a physiotherapist to understand the details into it, details of this thing. Now, today I will be covering as much as I can, or whatever the overview I can give you about this technique, but definitely it's a huge and a vast topic, which is mandatory for every physiotherapist to know if they are going into hospital settings or treating any patient who have got any kind of lung issues. And that doesn't mean that the patient should be only in the ICU or hospital settings. That is, again, if the patient is coming to your clinical setup, or if the patient is suffering from any kind of underlying condition like COPD, or if a patient is smoker, bronchitis, fibrosis, whatever. So that's the main basis why that's the main aim of me taking this lecture today. So again, getting back to the goals now, the main goal of knowing bronchial hygiene, or applying bronchial hygiene, is to prevent accumulation of secretions. Yes, we have discussed this before. Improve mobilization and drainage of secretions. Of course, many times a patient cannot remove secretions by themselves, and that is the reason we come into picture, where we try to mobilize the secretion from various parts of the lung, get it to the central airways, and then with various maneuvers, we try to remove it out. Then preventing atelectasis, as I said, any mucus accumulation can lead to atelectasis, that is collapse of the alveoli of the lungs. We have seen alveoli in the beginning, and that can lead to increased mucus production, can also lead to this condition. This can in turn prevent respiratory infections and complications, promote relaxation and improve breathing pattern, reduce labor breathing. Whenever you have increased secretions, as I said, it interferes with all your respiratory functions, and that leads to labored breathing. You clear the lung, that will promote relaxation, promote breathing, improve breathing pattern, and that will ultimately reduce your work of breathing. Improve gaseous exchange, ventilation, respiratory function, and all this, when you do with an ICU patient, will definitely help you to promote early weaning of ventilation. And being a chest physiotherapist, or being any physiotherapist who is working in the ICU setup, especially with the patients who are ventilated, one of the primary goal of a physiotherapist is to treat in such a way that we promote, or we lead to early weaning of ventilation. So for that reason, bronchial hygiene is very, very, very important. And for long term, like this is what I said was like a short term goals. Like when you give bronchial hygiene, immediately you start seeing all these effects in the patient. But even when you continue with that bronchial hygiene thing with the patient for the the long-term goal of this technique is basically to improve the aerobic capacity. Of course, if your lungs will function well, your aerobic capacity is improved. Without a good aerobic capacity, you cannot really perform all the activities of daily life in a normal way. Improve cardiorespiratory exercise tolerance. Of course, you need your cardiorespiratory fitness, and that can be improved if you have a healthy lung and a clean and a clear lung. Improve exercise tolerance. Of course, with the above two, that will definitely improve your exercise tolerance. Now, where do you give and where do you apply this bronchial hygiene? So as I said initially, definitely first you have to give it to critically ill patients who are admitted in the ICU, because the moment, as I said, you enter the ICU, and if you have to see any patient who is ventilated, or neurological cases, or any cases, the first thing that comes into your mind is bronchial hygiene, that is treating the lung with your physiotherapy protocols. So yes, first is critically ill patient. Secondly, hospitalized patients. It is not necessary that all the patients who are ventilated only will need your bronchial hygiene technique, or all the patients who are having any kind of cardiorespiratory disease will only want that. Even in surgical cases, as I said, due to anesthesia, the cuff reflex is depressed, and that can again lead to accumulation of secretion. So of course, our role is very important in those cases as well. And even in neuromuscular cases where the respiratory muscle weakness occurs, then over there also the expansion, the lung capacity, respiratory function, everything is reduced. And that can also again lead to accumulation of secretions, and your role is very much defined over there as well. And after that, home program. Now, when I say bronchial hygiene, it doesn't mean that you leave the patient the moment the patient is discharged. Of course, it is something that can recur. There can be again the, you can say, reaccumulation of secretion, maybe not as what it was in the ICU, but our role as a physiotherapist is actually prevent any further accumulation of secretion in the patient as well. And that can be done by giving a proper home program of how to do it by self, and how to do activities, techniques, or by using different equipments, whatever is available and handy for those patients, to continue this bronchial hygiene activity at home as well. So these are the areas where actually our role is defined. Now, going ahead with indications where all you can use it, of course, first thing that I need to tell before going to the indications is it is entirely dependent on individuals' prevailing pathophysiology. Maybe if one patient or one disease is requiring one technique, or you can say you can give entire techniques of postural drainage to one patient of suppose COPD, it is not necessary that the same technique can be applicable to another patient who you can say is in the another room with the same disease. So while giving any kind of chest physiotherapy maneuver, which includes primarily, of course, bronchial hygiene, you need to be very specific, and you need to understand that every individual is different. And just because it is written in the protocol or something that for these patients you can give these techniques, doesn't mean that you can just apply it to all the patients. So you have to be very, very specific while applying any kind of bronchial hygiene maneuver or techniques to the patient when you are treating the patients in the ICU specifically. And of course, same goes with the patient in the ward and for the home program as well. So generalizing the indications, okay, I will not say everything. There are many more than this, but just the basic ones, and the most important and the common ones are the one which have increased secretions or ineffective cough due to respiratory diseases. The most common are cystic fibrosis, bronchitis, bronchiectasis, etc. The earlier the picture of lung that I have shown you was of bronchiectasis. Post-operative cases, as I said, in surgical cases, we do give anesthesia to the patient, and that reduces the cough reflex. You can say they temporarily paralyzes your ciliary movements, and that's one of the reasons why the cough reflex is also reduced. In neurological patients, spinal cord injury patients, muscle weakness, respiratory muscle weakness when the patient is unable to cough out, artificial airways, musculoskeletal disorders, atelectasis due to secretions. Now, as I said, atelectasis is a complication as well that can happen because of accumulation of secretion also. And of course, it comes under the indication as well. Now, going ahead, these are very minimal contraindications, but of course, it varies as per the patients. But these are the general ones which I wanted to note down. That is, which I wanted to specify: increased intracranial pressure, unstable head, neck, or spine injury, increased risk of aspiration, cardiac instability, pulmonary embolism or pulmonary edema, followed by congestive heart failure. Now, coming directly to the methods, when I speak about methods of this thing, bronchial hygiene. So we know how to drain it. We have already done a lot of it. So I will just summarize it so that we can go in detail with every one of this. First one is postural drainage. The most common ones, which we all know: coughing and huffing techniques, high compressive oscillation, positive expiratory pressure devices, mechanical insufflation, exsufflation, manual hyperinflation, exercise, and mobilization. So as we will go ahead, you will understand what I'm exactly talking about. Now, so when we talk about clearance techniques, as I said, the first thing in bronchial hygiene is clearing your lungs. So everything starts from the clearance techniques. And then if you remember the goals of what we said, like about improving the chest oxygenation, respiratory functions and all that, that follows the clearance part. So when we talk about clearance techniques, like lung clearance techniques, you need to understand there are two types of it. So one is passive, where it is entirely dependent on physiotherapist, where you passively try to remove the secretions and clear the lungs. And second is active clearance techniques, when the patient is cooperative enough and patient can cooperate and do it actively, or you can say even active assisted as well. Okay, so now we will be discussing first about the passive clearance techniques. So the conventional chest therapy that we have been doing is what? So when I talk about draining of secretions, the first thing, even a kid can get up and say that, I really don't need to specify that, that is positioning or postural drainage. Because once you start with any kind of drainage in your patient for secretions, the first and the foremost thing is positioning. That is just positioning your lung in such a way that it can move the secretions towards the central airways so basically positioning the lungs in a gravity assisted position, which eases the movement of the secretions. Now I won't go much in detail with the position because I'm sure everyone knows about it, but basically this is how we start with it, especially in the patients where it becomes very difficult to ask them to cough out and self actively clear their lungs. Secondly, even in those patients where specific areas of lungs are affected, like suppose only there is more left side, or it is more on the right side. So basically specifically to drain those specific areas, this is one of the best thing to start with. Okay, so once you position your patient in postural drainage, you can of course apply the additional chest maneuvers like percussion, vibration, or shaking in those positions to that patient. Of course, knowing all the contraindications, where it can be given to the patient and where it cannot be given to the patient. And once you do that, once you are able to move that towards the secretion, like you start with the positioning, then you give the maneuver to assist that movement of the secretion toward the central airways. And then if your patient is not ventilated, you can remove the secretion with suctioning. If the patient is ventilated, you can remove it out with the help of suctioning your sputum. If the patient is active and is cooperative with cough, then you can ask the patient to cough it out. Okay, even if the patient is in the ICU and if not ventilated, coughing is forced expiration with open glottis. Suppose if your patient is not coughing out, like he is not actively coughing well, but is conscious and cooperative, then what you can do is start it with the huffing, give few repetitions of huffing, and then you can follow it up with coughing, because that actually you can say suck up more. It helps in removing secretions better in the patients who have decreased cough reflex. Okay, so this is how you can ideally put your treatment, or you can ideally decide what is to be done with the patient as per the condition. So this is like a very conventional chest therapy that we all are doing since decades, and we all know, and these are the basic things that we are supposed to do and know as a physiotherapist the moment we have to see any kind of patient where bronchial hygiene is must. So I hope I'm clear, because this is something that everyone knows. Now going to the other advanced thing which is being used in the hospital setups and acute setups for actually draining and assisting the removal of secretion. So this is my most favorite, which even we use, that is high frequency chest wall oscillations. So it's a very simple technique in which you have to just put that vest. You must be knowing this as a vest device if you have practiced on this. It's just a vest which you have to put it around your chest, and you have to set the frequency which is between 2 to 25 hertz. It of course it alters and varies, and it is very much patient dependent, so you can set it accordingly. It oscillates in such a way that creating negative and positive pressure, that it helps in moving the secretions towards your central airways. So what we do is we give it for 5 minutes to the patients, and then we stop it, and then we ask the patient to huff, and then progressively they can cough it out. Similarly, you can again start the repetition once the patient is fine, settled, and then you can again start the same process ahead. This can be done for 20 minutes, once or twice a day as per the patient's condition, but you have to take care of patient's vital, which is very important. There are if any kind of contraindications, as I mentioned before, can be avoided in these conditions. So this is one more thing that we usually use, and it is like one of the famous, you can say, equipment that is being used for removing the cough. Now this thing can be used even in wards as well, and if the patient can afford, they can even use it for home care program as well. So this is like the easiest thing and the most effective thing. It reduces the effort of a chest physiotherapist and time of a chest physiotherapist as well, and you can of course combine it with other activities, other breathing exercises, other techniques as per the requirement of the patient. So this is one thing. Secondly, there is manual hyperinflation, which is also used by physiotherapists to maintain or restore lung volume in the intubated patients, or to promote secretion in intubated patients as well. Though barotrauma is one of the complication of this, and that's why it is avoided. So we don't we use it wherever it is required, or any other thing cannot be used. That's when I will actually say that it is recommended. So again, basically this is just, sorry. So you have to just coordinate it with the breathing pattern, and accordingly you just give it during the inspiration, so that you help, like it's like a lung recruitment technique where you help to also mobilize the secretion with the pressure which is given with the resuscitation bag to promote the removal of the secretions. It's usually given for 5 times or something, and then it can be followed with suctioning to actually drain or remove the secretion. Now there is something else which is called as cuff insufflator or exsufflator, which is basically used more, or you can say commonly used in neuromusculoskeletal disorders or neurological patients. And this is again a device which applies positive pressure of 30 to 50 centimeter of water to airways for 1 to 3 seconds, and then it abruptly reverses the airway pressure to -30 to -50 centimeter of water. And treatment session consists of 5 cycles of MIE followed by normal spontaneous breath. Now, if you will see in all these things, what we are trying to do is we are just trying to generate pressure inside the lungs so that we are able to move the mucus out of the alveoli. So basically all these just try to push the mucus by applying a negative, positive, alternate pressure, or you can say positive pressure, to just move the lungs out of the alveoli. So make it more specific. I'll just go back to one of the slides for all the late joinees who must have joined it. So coming back to this lung, so as I said, this is the main area where basically this is your alveoli, the last part of your bronchus, and here is where your secretions are accumulated. So all we do is whatever devices I have mentioned, we try to generate a pressure inside the alveoli so that it pushes the secretion out up to the central airways, and then it could be removed either by suctioning or by any kind of forced expiratory maneuvers that can help you to remove or expel the secretion out. I hope I'm clear till here. We'll go ahead. So as I said about the passive clearance therapy, now let us come to active clearance therapy, and this is something we can use in all kind of clinical and hospital settings as well, and also can give for the home care program to the patients as well. Now, talking about the active clearance therapy, the active airway clearance devices and techniques can be summarized into this PEP therapy, that is called as positive expiratory pressure therapy devices. So these are the devices that comes under that is Acapella, Flutter, SPAP, Cornet, and Quack devices. Similarly, the breathing techniques that you can give to your patient to actually help you to remove the secretion includes active cycle of breathing. We all know it commonly, and it is very commonly used. Autogenic drainage, it's a very effective technique and easy to perform as well, just similar to active cycle of breathing. And forced expiratory technique that includes coughing and huffing. Now, talking about positive expiratory pressure, going back to the alveoli part. Now, if you can remember that alveoli as a ball, same thing happens with this also. We try to create a pressure behind the mucus so that it is propelled, or you can say it moves towards the central airways by these devices, which can be then again removed out by any kind of forced expiratory technique. So if you can read what I have written, it involves active expiration against variable flow resistance. So you have to give resistance when the patient is expiring through the devices, and that in turns develops pressure in the alveoli behind the sputum, and which helps in drainage of that. And secondly, it helps move secretions into the larger airways by improving ventilation of under aerated segments and by preventing airway collapse during expiration. Now, in most of the conditions where you have accumulation of secretion, especially in the conditions like COPDs or obstructive lung diseases and all, what happens is there is a tendency of complete alveolar collapse after every expiration, because of the underlying condition, inflammation and everything. So this device helps us not only just to remove the secretion, but it also maintains the pressure to prevent that collapse when the patient is expiring or when the patient is doing exhalation. So that's why these are one of the best devices which you can give to your patient and which can be used for your patients. So the first two, as I mentioned, can be categorized into Acapella and Flutter. These are the widely used devices, easily available also, and you can give it to your patient. Now what happens in Flutter, if you can see, there is a ball which gives you resistance while you are oscillating ball, which gives you resistance while you are breathing out, and then that creates the positive expiratory pressure. Similarly, if you can see in Acapella, this is what is Acapella. So yeah, so Acapella combines the benefits of both PEP therapy and airway vibrations to mobilize pulmonary secretions and can be used in virtually any position, allowing patients to move freely and sit, stand or recline. So the best part is that patient can do this in any position. Especially what you can do is, like, if you know that one lobe or one zone requires more attention, then you can give that postural drainage position to that patient and make that patient use Acapella in that position for the enhanced effect, or to actually promote the removal of the secretions. And that's one of the best techniques that we use as well. It improves clearance of secretions, is easier to tolerate than chest physical therapy. Chest physical therapy is not that difficult to tolerate unless you are giving a bad percussion or you're not good with the percussion. And yes, definitely takes less than half the time of conventional CPT sessions. It facilitates opening of airways in patients with lung diseases with secretion problems such as COPD, asthma, and cystic fibrosis. Now, you have color-coded units present for Acapella, green for high flow and blue for low flow, if you can see over here. So you can give it as, like, you can change the resistance as your patient is improving. So it's a kind of a muscle or you can say respiratory muscle training as well. So it just does not helps you in removing the secretion, but it also helps you in improving the respiratory mechanics of your patient as well. And you can adjust the Acapella frequency and flow resistance simply by turning an adjustment dial, which is usually present over here. So this is what Acapella Flutter is, but there are more devices which are used in different countries as well, and even in India also we have been using it for few of our patients. But Acapella Flutter is basically the most common and trending devices as such, you know that. So there is something called as Cornet, which is very easy for kids to actually use it as a PEP device. It's the same thing. You have to just blow from one end and you will get resistance while blowing. Now the second one is Quack, or you can say Bubble PEP. Bubble PEP is also used widely amongst the children, where there is this tube, you can say this container where they have a tubing and the water bubble. They have to just expire and produce bubbles over there, and they inspire through the same tube. Similarly, you have this device Quake, which is again a same positive expiratory pressure device. You have to blow out through this mouthpiece and it gives you the same resistance effect as what you can get in the other devices as well. Now, along with these devices, it is very important that you give breathing exercises to your patient, as I mentioned initially. So now when I talk about breathing exercises, see, when we talk about cough or any kind of sputum production which is related to any kind of chest respiratory disease or any kind of chest disease, of course we need to understand that it is interfering with your entire respiratory capacity, volumes, your respiratory muscles, your breathing muscles, your inspiration, your expiration. So if you really want to maintain that bronchial hygiene in the patient, just removal of secretions cannot be enough. You will have to maintain that and prevent that. That can only happen if you strengthen the muscles. That can only happen if you normalize the lung expansion of a patient, if you normalize the aeration of the patient. Now, why I keep on saying lung expansion and aeration separately is because not all lung diseases require lung expansion. If your lung is hyperinflated, you can just work on more other aspects initially in the acute stages. So you need to really understand where what to give. Of course, that is like a detailed thing, but yes. So that is where a physiotherapist has to be very judgmental and decisive while taking or while designing a protocol for any kind of patient. And as I said initially, That's why I say that every treatment is individual based, because you have to see what is required for what patient as per their underlying conditions, their age, their underlying comorbidities, their vitals, what are present at that moment, and your maneuver is what effect your technique is producing in those patients. So accordingly, you have to be very much judgmental and decisive about your therapy. So starting with this, the most common breathing exercise that you can make your patient do for airway clearance is, and also for improving the respiratory functions, are active cycle of breathing, autogenic drainage. So in active cycle of breathing, we can just finish this part and then I can just explain in short about that uh, as per the time limit. So next comes your neurophysiological facilitation of respiration. So what happens is, suppose if you just keep on working passively on your patient and without, and if your patient's muscles are weak, like suppose there is a diaphragm weakness or any other weakness which is actually leading to like the prolonged, you are unable to actually determine or get a prolonged benefit for that patient. Like of course you would want your patient to get better, get active once the patient is out of ventilator. Then you would want as a physiotherapist your patient to start doing activities, breathing exercise, or cough or remove forced expiratory techniques by themselves as well, because that will ultimately lead to bronchial hygiene, and that is what we are talking about. So for that, you really need to work on the respiration part as well from the time when you start seeing the patient in the ICU. So in case if you see that your patient is on ventilator, like basically on continuous mode, or modes where you see that the patient is a lot dependent on the artificial breathing, you can start giving neurophysiological facilitation of respiration as well. You can start giving diaphragm facilitation techniques to your patient as well, along with the entire postural drainage, passive bronchial hygiene techniques, as what we mentioned before. Because this is, now here we are looking for the longer term recovery of the patient. Similarly, once your patient is out of the ICU and once your patient is active and using his or her respiratory muscles well, then you can put those patients on respiratory muscle training. Respiratory muscle training again includes a lot of other devices, like I can show you one after this. You have power breather device, threshold device, resistive exercise devices, and then of course you can give your patients incentive spirometer and balloon bladder as well, which are the basic respiratory devices to actually work on your respiratory functions. And it's always good to start with those and then go ahead with the treatment or the strengthening and or improving the endurance in your patients. After that, of course, a good home exercise program is a must whenever you have any kind of patient where you have to work on a bronchial hygiene part. Definitely, if a patient of COPD is having any kind of acute exacerbation, or if the patient has got any tendency of sputum production or anything like that, they may get it ahead. So it is like just general dieting or general bodybuilding that you do inside the gym. You build, you gain weight, and or you lose weight, and if you stop it, you again start getting back to zero. The same thing is with your muscles, or you can see your lungs as well. If you avoid it where you know that you are prone to it, you may actually not help it in a complete way. So that's why it is very important for you as a physiotherapist to give a detailed home exercise program along with whatever other exercises you are giving to your patient, along with to include in their daily activity, because we have to really work on the long term benefit of such patients. And if you are perfect with all these things, then only you will be able to actually improve the aerobic capacity of your patient, and that can only be done if your cardiorespiratory fitness is good, improved. Now I don't even need to say much, just imagine yourself having some normal flu, normal virus, or just you're coughing out, you have normal basic upper respiratory tract infection, and just think of doing exercises in that uh, during that period. Of course, with such basic disease, it's very difficult for us to actually feel fresh, feel normal, or we are unable to give that 100% of our performance that we can usually give without having a normal breathing issue or flu or cough. So of course, imagine for those patients who have got tendency of getting this, it is so important to work on their respiratory muscle, their breathing, normalizing their breathing, working on the working on regulating their breathing, reducing the labored breathing for patient is doing. So just imagine how important it is for their cardiorespiratory fitness. Because as a physiotherapist, ultimately we work in improving the quality of life of the patient. That is our primary goal. And for that, we really need to focus on all these aspects as well. Now, coming ahead with this, with the last part, that is mobilization and exercise. Immobility is a major factor contributing to retention of secretions. So even if you're seeing the patient in ICU, early mobilization and exercise are standard care for surgical patients and even for patients who are having a cough or reduced respiratory function with other functions as well. So you can basically just start with a normal propped up position, edge of the bed position. Even those minute, you can say, mobilization really helps their respiratory functions to improve in a very major way. Like for us, it is just edge of the bed, but that can actually give a huge, can lead to a huge improvement in such patients. So good mobilization and of course exercise, depending on the stage of the patient, it improves the overall gaseous exchange and lung functions. So just giving breathing exercises with no general mobility or no mobilization will really not fetch that much benefit as what we are trying to get from a patient. So you really need to make your patient understand how important it is, because a patient for a patient, it must be once the patient is going back to their daily activity or is discharged or going back to home, like it is very normal for a patient to actually skip their basic general mobility exercises thinking that why should I do it because I got a lung issue, and definitely breathing exercise is sufficient for me. Like a lot of our parents also think like that. Even you must have seen people and students around you, older elder generation around you thinking and talking about the same thing. We come across such kind of patients like every day. So yes, so for those patients, you have to make them understand that how using other muscles of your body, especially your posture muscles, your respiratory muscles, your accessory respiratory muscles, how it can help you in improving the respiratory function and overall cardiorespiratory fitness of your body. So all these are basic things that you really need to understand when you are talking about any kind of bronchial hygiene part. This was just the overview of it, and like there is a lot of detailed things inside this which we can definitely talk further. I'll just stop this and I can discuss more with you. So that's what I meant, that when you're talking about chest physiotherapy, so you have to be very specific about what to give to what patient. As I said, all the contraindications are there, and then treat your patient from the time the patient is in the ICU till the time the patient is not getting back to his daily activity. So it shouldn't be just very much specific to your ICU or ward treatment. Your home program plays a very, very, very important role in maintaining a hygiene or a bronchial hygiene of a patient. So I hope I'm clear with this. This was just the overview of what we have done. It is, I won't say it like it's an entire treatment, or it's not even the entire bronchial hygiene part, because if I get time in if I get chance ahead, then maybe I'll explain more about respiratory muscle training, which is also which is also again an important part for the same thing. So I hope I'm clear with all these and you were able to understand few of it, or at least some part of it. I try to simplify this as much as I can, but still this is like some part that you really need to understand. It was more about the techniques and the machines and the devices that we are using presently in the hospital setups, which you all need to know, so that when you encounter anything, it is not like something that you were not aware of. So I think I can take questions now, if any.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
There is a question from Dr. Yogita Krishnan.
Yeah.
Acapella for secretion clearance is same for adult as well as for pediatric patient. How to know which acapella device in term of color we should use in pediatric condition?
See, as I said, you have to always start with the low resistance. Fine. And if you have seen, I have mentioned about the device before, that is a Cornet, which is very easy to use for a pediatric case. So if that is available, then you can easily go with that, because that is something you can start with a ped patient and then go ahead with a cappella. That is one thing. Or second thing, you have to always start with the low resistance in peds as well.
There is another question from Dr. Akansha. Please elaborate little. How can we do bronchial hygiene activity in tracheostomic patient?
So see, if you have seen the earlier part, that was the passive part, like the passive clearance part. So if you have seen, I have mentioned in that only. Let us start from the basic part. Okay, let's not go to the higher part first. Postural drainage for tracheostomy patient, we know. Percussion, vibration, shaking. Now, since the patient cannot remove the cough, so of course we will suction it in future, like after that, following that same treatment. Now, including these, for a tracheostomy patient, you have to also initiate, or you can say facilitate, as I said before, the respiration. That is neurophysiological facilitation also plays a very important part, or plays an important part in such conditions. So that is something you cannot exclude in this. And second thing, for tracheostomy patient, which is basically not the main part of bronchial hygiene as well, but diaphragmatic breathing initiation, like, just asking them to do an initiate a diaphragmatic breathing also plays an important role, because that helps in future for you can say coughing and everything. And second thing, incentive spirometry. You can always put an incentive spirometer on the tracheostomy tube, like suppose this is the spirometer. Okay, and you can just put these, I have removed the mouthpiece, and you can put it on the tracheostomy. You can remove the cap of the tube, and you can put it over there and ask the patient to breathe in. So that also helps in improving the respiratory functions, and definitely that can also lead to a proper bronchial hygiene as a whole. So I hope that clears it. Anything else? If you don't understand, you can ask me.
Thank you, ma'am. There is another question from Kitsia Intizar Ahmed. Ma'am, please explain autogenic drainage technique.
Okay, so autogenic drainage technique, I could actually explain you better with a practical session, not like this, but see, it has got different volumes. So what happens in autogenic drainage is you have to move secretions from the peripheral airways in such a way that it goes and it comes up to the central airways. Now, how can you do that? That is something which can be done only by different volumes of your expiration. So basically, you start with something which is low, then you go for the middle volume, and then you go ahead with the, you can say, higher expiratory volume, like how you do in a forced expiratory technique. So to start with it, okay, so like in a simpler way, I can say, you start with a low volume diaphragmatic breathing exercise, and then you go ahead with it, increase the volume, add chest expansion in that, and then you go ahead and then include forced expiratory respiration in that, which leads to higher volume. So that's how you divide, like, you progress in your volumes to actually drain that secretion from the peripheries to your central airways, and then you force the patient, or you make the patient to cough. So that's the basic concept of it. Like if you can understand it in this way, maybe I will be putting video on my YouTube channel, Physiolab by Dr. Samana, in future for ACBT and autogenic drainage, so you can check it over there as well. Any other question? I hope it's clear.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. There is another question from Dr. Nisha. How to do bronchial hygiene in rib fracture?
Okay, so first thing, definitely when a patient is having a rib fracture, you cannot touch the rib. Like, of course, it's like very much obvious. So it becomes a bit difficult for us, because any maneuver, any chest maneuver a passive or an active maneuver can is avoided or contraindicated in such cases. But a good positioning within the limitations is always a good option. And even suctioning can be done if the secretions are too much. So now it depends on the underlying condition what you can give to those patients. But yeah, postural drainage is very much acceptable in these conditions. And then suctioning if the patient is unable to remove. But basically, postural drainage is the ideal treatment to drain the secretions in such cases. This is something very common which we see in road traffic accidents. And we assist those patients, like we basically position those patients more to actually help them to drain it, and then we can suction it out. I hope it's clear.
Thank you, ma'am. Exercises and advice for the physiotherapist dealing with COVID patient.
Okay, it's a very huge topic. Like I can say you ensure that work, if you have a COVID patient in ICU, or if you have a COVID patient who is basically in wards or mild or moderate disease, first thing is work on prone positioning, because we have been talking about positioning. Prone position helps in improving the oxygenation, ventilation, perfusion mismatch in those patients. So prone positioning is very important in those patients. Exercises focusing on the areas or zones of the lungs are again very important when you deal with COVID-19 cases. Other than that, breathing, like deep breathing exercises, proves an important role in treating COVID-19 cases, but you have to be very specific that your breathing exercises are not adding on or increasing the work of breathing in these patients. Because what happens as the COVID patient increases or, goes from one stage to another or another stage to another, like mild to moderate to severe, whatever, your treatment protocol separates, or you can say it differentiates from what it was in the previous one. So that is why giving a breathing exercise is very much individual and stage based in COVID-19 cases. And you have to be very specific with the work of breathing part when you are giving any breathing exercise to such patients. So the best and the simplest thing that I can advise you now is just carry a pulse oximeter and keep measuring the SpO2 of your patient, so that you know that your patient is actually whether improving or helping them to improve their respiratory functions, or actually causing damage to their, or you can say aggravating the work of breathing in those cases. So that's how you have to be little calculative. If the patient is not having any kind of underlying respiratory condition like obstructive or something, then deep breathing exercise is the choice of treatment. But if the patient has got any kind of underlying issues or any other comorbidities, then the line of treatment again differs. So it is a very huge topic which I also teach. So if you want, you can go through that. So I think in time limitation, I think I can clear your this much.
Cost of high frequency chest wall oscillator.
So yes, it is an expensive device and it is usually used in the hospital settings. I have been using it in my hospital as well. So it is used in the hospital settings to actually remove the secretions, and it is very convenient and very easy to use. It's like a one-time investment. So if your hospital can afford it, or if you can afford it, then definitely I think it's a treatment of choice. It's one of the best.
Any advice for the lung cancer patient?
Depends, of course. Lung cancer, if there is metastasis in lung or anything like that, basically the treatment of choice is what? You have to improve the respiratory function in those patients, fine, and that can be done with a good breathing exercise with good breathing holds. That is the most important thing that you can do for such cases to actually improve their respiratory capacity and volumes. Second thing, in those cases, work of breathing is usually aggravated with any kind of activity. So again, you have to pace your activity very well while doing any such thing. So you have to give proper interval trainings to such patients when you are giving any kind of exercises or any kind of thoracic expansion or any kind of deep breathing exercises to such patients. Now, again, as I said, you need to know that what is the underlying comorbidity along with the lung cancer or along with the thing that the patient is suffering from. So your treatment, being a chest physiotherapist, actually differentiates with each and every individual. So this is like the basic thing to start with such patients, but again, it is individual based. So I hope it's clear.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. There's another question from Dr. Sneha Jain. Can we do bronchial hygiene technique in pleural effusion?
See, first thing you need to understand that bronchial hygiene is something like you taking bath every day. Okay, so you have to keep your lung hygienic. There is no question of can I keep, it's like you're asking me, can I take bath, ma'am, today or not? So I hope you understand what I'm trying to tell you. So that is something like that. Of course, maybe we are limited with the physiotherapy treatment in that, but yes, you do drain the secretion, you do drain the pleural effusion patients to remove the amount of the fluid that is present inside the lung. So that is again a kind of bronchial hygiene technique only. You're just trying to keep that lung fluid free or abscess free if it goes into pus ahead, or lung abscess in any such conditions as well. So yes, it is included. So after that, basically our role is signified more, because then we have to really work on maintaining it, expanding it, aerating it, maintaining the respiratory complications, and maintaining the lung volumes again, as I said. So of course, we have a very important role in terms of bronchial hygiene as well in such cases. I hope that's clear.
Thank you, ma'am. There is a question from Shrutika. Post-COVID fibrosis, when are we supposed to start rehabilitation?
First thing, when you have a post-COVID fibrosis case, you have to start the rehabilitation from the time you came to know that, okay, fine, this patient has got post-COVID fibrosis, depending on the present condition of that patient. So yes, for post-COVID fibrosis, you have an entire pulmonary rehabilitation protocol that you have to follow that includes when to start with it, how to go about it, which all activities to add, which all exercises to give. And that is like something not, I would not really say that I can tell you in like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, because then if you put it in a wrong way, then that is something not acceptable, because COVID-19 is like the most important thing that you should know as a chest physiotherapist now. And it has got a very good protocol to follow, just not with the breathing exercises, but with a lot of other things. So yes, for fibrosis, if the patient is in ARDS, if the patient is in ICU, definitely we do avoid giving any kind of chest physiotherapy or manual, except for the positioning part, that is prone positioning, which is being given, and prone positioning is very effective in ARDS. We don't want to increase the work of breathing in these patients, because already they are on ventilator and on high. So that's why it is basically contraindicated when, or we avoid it in the ICU setup of such patients. But when those patients recover, basically when those patients are out of ICU, then your rehabilitation part immediately starts with those patients. And of course, then you have to follow proper protocol and treatment to go ahead with it. So again, that's a huge topic. If you want to know more, you can attend my COVID lectures. That's all I can say. But yeah, you need to really know about it. I hope that's clear.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's for today.
Okay, so I think we're done with the question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was really very nice and informative session, and we are happy to have you on our platform. I again thank you on behalf of GUMHA, Global Outreach Medical and Health
Thank
Association,
you.
and take care, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Rakesh and the entire team of Global Health Outreach Program, Dr. Nazneen and everyone. And I really wish you all that you all are safe and utilizing your lockdown by attending lectures, webinars, and of course, treating COVID patients wherever possible. And be safe. This time will also pass, of course. Be safe. Try to make your people aware, because after every lecture I keep on telling all the physios and all the viewers who are attending this that as a physiotherapist and a healthcare professional, even if you're not able to see patient directly because of some limitations that you have in your area, of creating the awareness becomes your primary responsibility. So I request you all to do that with everyone who is around you, in whichever small or possible means you all can do. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
ma'am. Thank you so much. Good night and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.